to the cloud. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our Make Your Own Chipboard mini Zoom. And it really actually is pretty easy to make your own chipboard and build up some dimensions. Have used the foam squares and that kind of thing in the past, but sometimes you want your or a little bit more will help you build up some dimension and use it on
I'm not able to hear you. I think you're missing the microphone.
My mute is, I'm not muted. Can you hear me better now?
I can now, thank you.
Okay, I will just try to, I've pulled my computer a little bit closer to me, so hopefully that works a little bit better. And again, if everyone can please mute themselves in the background so that we can keep background noise to a minimum, and I will do my best to be as articulate as possible. All right, so we are going to be making chipboard today, and if you ever looked at a piece of chipboard, and I meant to grab one, and of course I didn't, a chipboard piece is really just layers upon layers of paper. So we're going to use our dies to make our own chipboard shape. Today I'm going to be using 110-pound cardstock from Elizabeth. Matt just brought me up a piece of chipboard here, and I don't know, it's probably not going to show very well on the camera, but yes, chipboard is just layers and layers of paper to make it thicker. So we're going to do that ourselves. So like I said, I've got Elizabeth Crafts. We have their soft finish cardstock here in the store. It's a 10-pack, I believe, of paper for $5.99. It's 8.5 by 11 size. You can use them for your card bases. I know some people like the heavier weight for a card base, especially if you've got lots of layers and things going on. That way it holds your artwork without it being too flimsy. But it's also perfect for this technique because it is a little bit thicker, so you don't need to cut as many layers. The other thing that I'm going to be using today, you may have seen it in our newsletter, is we have a Pretty Romance card kit. So this bundle, I'm saying a lot, I apologize for that. This card kit is available online, and there is going to be a free class included with this on, I'm trying to think of the calendar, it's not this Thursday, but next Thursday, which I think is July the 9th at 6:30, right here on Zoom. So if you buy the bundle, not only do you get close to $150 worth of product, and I believe the cost of the bundle is only $65, but you also get this free class, which we're going to be making these 4 cards, and then depending on our time, we may make some more stuff as well, and it's just going to be kind of like hanging out with your girlfriends. So today I'm going to be using some of the paper from this kit. It is so beautiful, and when they call it Pretty Romance, they're not lying. So it's this beautiful purple. This one has the seashells on the one side and these beautiful flowers on the back. It's not showing up super well on my screen. Maybe it's showing up better on your screen. It's got these pretty turquoise teals with the purples that go with it. This is the second sheet with this green and gray kind of basket weave pattern on the back. And you get 4 each of these sheets. So you get lots and lots of paper to play with. There's this pretty diagonal with the purples and teals and this ombre heart look on the back. Make sure I get it here on the camera. We've got some little hearts with a beautiful damask, and there is actually a damask stamp set in the bundle as well. We've got these pretty arrows with the little hearts on them. So if you're making wedding cards, or I mean, I know we're a long way from the next Ballantyne's, or anything that you just want something really pretty and soft. And then look at that watercolor look on the back. And then the last one, this one is definitely more wedding focused because it says just married, wedding wishes, happiness, celebrate, bride, love, Mr. and Mrs. And then on the back is this pretty, I almost want to call them coral. I don't know what these little plants are, but it's got that beautiful thistle purple color in the background. And let me tell you, I had trouble picking which paper I was going to use today, but I settled on the hearts. So we'll be using that in a little bit. So like I said, building your own chipboard is really just about cutting layers. And that's where your punch or your dies are really going to come in handy because it means you can cut multiple things in exactly the same shape. So when I get to doing my card, this is kind of the layout that I'm looking at. So I'm going to use the die set that comes in that Pretty Romance kit. There is a stamp set as well. So if you didn't have pattern paper, you could absolutely make your own pattern paper with the stamp set and then use the die to cut it out. And if we keep going along, maybe I will demonstrate, show how we can do that. Right now, I'm just going to pick a die out of this set. So you go ahead and pick your favorite die that you want to use on the card. Oh, they're all in a little package inside the package. This one, based on what I want to do, is maybe a little bit too big, or I could probably make this thinner. Let's see what the next size down looks like, because I like that that's nice and big. Here's the next size down. That kind of looks puny, unfortunately. So I'm going to ditch this. I'm going to go back to my big die. And maybe there's a way we can work that in afterwards. So I'm just choosing my nice big die, and I'm just choosing some of that 110-pound cardstock. If you don't have 110-pound, no worries. Use what you've got. And quite honestly, I mean, as much as it looks a little bit better from the side if you use all the same color, I don't think it matters super much because right now we're just building thickness and then we're going to cover it up with the pattern paper. So maybe for our first try, let's try using all the same color, but you can use your scraps. You can use your pieces that, pieces of paper that maybe you don't like anymore, or maybe you got a bunch of cardstock in a multi-pack and there's just that one color that you just don't use. This is the perfect opportunity for that. So I'm going to scooch over to my die cutting machine, and you ladies can do the same thing. Let's cut at least 3 of the same die. If you can get 4 or 5, even better, because we're just going to stack them and layer them up to create our own chipboard. So I'm just going to scooch over here. Oh, look at that. There's one pass and that cut out beautifully. So there's one. Cut a second one. My apologies. There's 2. This is where I maybe should have brought the Gemini from home, but a little crank never hurts anyone. There's 3. As I drop my plate, I should be able to get a 4th one here out of my piece of paper. Let's. You can just see me off the corner here. Hello. All righty. And there we have it. So I now have 4 pieces of my chipboard. Just slide all my dies off to the side. What am I kicking under here? And this is where you would, well, my preference is to use a liquid glue. I've got the Tim Holtz Distress collage medium. The reason why I'm choosing this one is a couple of things. First of all, it's made for doing collages and layering paper on top of each other. It does have a matte finish when it dries. So if we do happen to get a little bit off the edges as we're going along, you're not going to be able to see it. Probably my favorite feature of this glue is that it actually shrinks when it dries. So if you do get a little bit of extra stuff coming out of it, it's going to shrink and you're not going to see it on your page or in between your layers of your paper. So I'm just going to take it and I'm going to take 2 of my die cuts. Make sure ahead of time you figure out how to line them up. And I'm going to glue them together. So I've taken the top one and just flipped it upside down so that I remember to flip it back over. Just going to apply, whoops, a little bit of this glue. You don't need a whole lot. I would say going around the edges is probably your best bet. You don't need to cover the whole surface unless you want to. If you have stuff like die cut and bond or any of those things where you can put the adhesive on the back of your die cuts even before you cut it, that would also work. But what you do want is you want nice edge to edge coverage because you're building up these layers. So I'm going to put this guy on top. And yeah, I oozed out a little bit off in the corner here, but I know that when it dries, it is going to vanish. So there I have 2 layers. I'm going to add my 3rd layer. And again, make sure I line this up so I know which direction it's going in. Nothing worse than having glue down and having it in the wrong wiggle space. So there I've just put glue. Hard to see white on white. I've just put glue kind of around the edges of my piece. And here I moved it. So there I'm going to add my 2nd one on. So now I have 3 layers of cardstock. And just squish it all down. And yes, I am getting a little bit oozing out the edges, but with Tim's fabulous collage medium, I know when I'm all done, I'm not going to see it. I love this glue. Especially when doing fiddly bits. All right, so there's 3, and then I'm going to do the same thing with my last one. Let's get my direction right. There we go. And squish. All right, here we go. Let's clean off that edge. And so already, just with 4 layers, whether you're using the 110 pound paper or the thinner paper, whatever you have, you can already see that those layers are building up and building your dimension. So when you go to put it on a card, it's really going to pop up and stand out on your card. If you want to go ahead and add more layers, if you feel like your chipboard needs to be thicker, by all means, Please continue to do so. This is a personal choice as to how thick you want that to be. And then because I want to do kind of a tone on tone look for this, I'm now going to cut my top layer right out of this piece. Now you do have to be careful because you want it to be where you want your flower to be, obviously. If you want contrast, and maybe I'll do this as well, you could cut your top layer out of your cardstock mat. So this cardstock mat, if I didn't tell you off the top, is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and that's going to cover my card base from edge to edge. My pattern piece is 4 tall by 5 1/4 wide. So that gives us just that little bit of a narrow mat on your card. And it's probably one of my favorite measurements to use, because by doing it this way, I can get 6 pattern pieces out of a 12 by 12 instead of 4 if I went to that bigger size. This helps me stretch my pretty pattern paper a little bit further. So let me show you what I'm going to do, because I'm gonna do it both ways, and then we can choose. Where did I put my big flower die? So on my pattern paper, when I'm making my card, I want my flower to be kind of that left-hand side. So I'm going to take my purple tape and just tack it down. Just my little purple tape here, tack it down, and I'm going to run that through the die cutting machine. And then just so I have a second one, I'm also going to do it out of my cardstock. With the cardstock, you just want to make sure you go as close to the middle as you can, because we're going to cover it up. So that gives you options while you're playing around. There is my pattern flower. And then with my cardstock one, like I said, I just want it to be as close to the middle so that when I layer that pattern paper on top, nobody sees it. All right, so now I have options. We always love options because it gives us some flexibility in our creating. All right, so put the dies away, put my plates away. So when I go to assemble, that's going to be on my base. This is going to be the next layer. My chipboard is now going to fit like a puzzle in that opening. So it's okay that there were holes and things didn't look like they were going to line up, but guess what, they are. So that's all lining in. And now I can choose, do I want kind of a not monochromatic, but more of that tone on tone look, where that flower just pops up because it is dimensional? That's kind of how I had envisioned the card when I first started creating it, or when I had it in my mind for today. But maybe it's better if we do that. That seems to pop just a little bit more. And again, this is where if you have your coordinating stamp set, I could even stamp on this. So I'm just going to call down and get my black ink brought up because I did not bring that. And then what I would do is I would stamp on this and then glue it right on top of my chipboard. And then we can start layering. So just bear with me a second. joy of live TV, ladies. Thank you for your patience as I get that all set out. So I'm just going to take that apart. I'm going to grab my flower stamp. And there's my kiddo. Thank you, kiddo, for bringing that up for me. He's very deliberate not to get on camera. I am going to use, I wonder. I have a new color called Warm Breeze, or no, I think I'm going to stick with the black. And what I'm going to do is grab my stamp. And again, totally unprepared for this morning, so I don't have a block, but that's okay. I'm going to use my ink lid. Let's make sure I get it lined up the way I want it. So this is going to go like this. Take my lid out. Let's do it over here just to make sure I got everything I didn't. Try again. That's better. All right, get ink all over. And excuse my head if I get in the camera. Beautiful. Inky on my fingers. So this would layer right onto my chipboard. And again, everything's all the same shape, so it's going to fit perfectly. I'm gonna just put some glue. Like so. Layer that on top. So that's what happens, ladies, when your vision doesn't necessarily turn out the way you had it in your head. But that's why we like to cut some extra pieces and have that flexibility. And I'm getting some fingerprints on it, but I know you ladies are stamping better than I am today. All right, so all our pieces are ready now. I'm gonna grab my card base. I'm going to layer on my cardstock around that hole. That one's going edge to edge. I'm going to layer on my pattern paper. Ignoring the hole in the middle because I know we're going to fill that in. And I've got this little bit sticking up, these little corners sticking up from where we cut it out that I didn't hit with the tape runner, but I'm just going to squeeze a little bit of my liquid glue. Oh, maybe a little bit too much, but it's all going to get hidden, so it's all good. But that way, just, you're getting all my messy habits today, guys. We all have those days, don't we? Squeeze a little bit, just a little bit. There we go. And a little bit under here. So now our chipboard piece is going to fit in like a puzzle where we've got that opening. And you don't even see my mess. Probably one of my favorite things about crafting is that people don't necessarily see your intermediate steps. They just see how beautiful it looks when it's finished. Look at that. Look at that. So what I can do is I can now take my straight strip if I wanted to, but it's not going to fit. That's okay. And I'm going to take some foam stickers from the bundle that we've been using. And because it'll fit, which one should I use? I'm going to use the XOXO. If you had a sentiment stamp, you could create a little strip. You could even create that in layers to make your board. So have your sentiment strip stand up as well. I'm going to use this guy. Make sure my second O there, or my first O, stays together. I've got some silver Nuvo that I'm going to pop in the center here. Just some little dots. There we go. And that gives it some more sparkle. And there you go. You've got a nice, simple, layered and dimensional card. I love how that stands up. And it's all ready to go. So how are we doing for time? We are already, we are only at 10:25. So how do you guys feel about making a second card? If you want to make a second card, hang out with me for a few more minutes. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut up some white paper, and I'm going to use my flower stamp and my improvised block to create a background, and then show you how you can die cut it and build up your layers in that way. So I'm going to set this aside because my Nuvo is wet and I don't want to put my fingers or my elbows in it. And the way I'm going today, I would probably do that. So it's here behind me. Under my palm here is my white cardstock. I'm just going to take an 8.5 by 11. I'm only going to cut down a 4 1/4 by 5.5 card front that we can later put onto a card base. If anyone has any questions on that first card, please feel free to shout them out as I'm cutting this paper. And 4 1/4. So there's my piece that I'm going to stamp on. Because I didn't bring my block, I'm actually going to switch down to the smaller flower. And because we've got pretty paper that we can put with it, we'll pick the colors. What colors do I have in my bag? Oh, this pink is pretty. So this is Charming Pink from Ballantyne. And this is me cheating. So I'm just going to random stamp all over this card base. And we'll do a test. But before you make your first stamp, you kind of want to strategically think about what areas you're going to pop up under that chipboard area. So I'm probably going to do one here, one up here, and one down here. Remember our rule of threes and joining triangles. So I'm going to start with those three and do them first. So here's one. And here's two. And here's three. So they're three solid full stamped images. And you've given yourself enough edge so that when we die cut this out to pop it up, it's not going to wreck the integrity of your card. So now I'm going to fill in some areas here. And there we go. And there we go, we're filling in those holes. I probably would try to put one in there if I had my clear block, but since I don't, I'm going to leave it. And then as with random stamping, you can go in and fill in with a second smaller stamp. So I've got this small, let's do yellow, just because it's fun and pretty. Put it on the end so I know where it is. There we go. Oh, this is pretty. And it's okay to overlap. All right, so there I've got my background created. Oops, make sure you put the right lid on the right end. So I am going to start by cutting out those 3 focal point flowers that I wanted to do. And then I'm going to cut a few more layers out of this extra piece that I've got, just so that we can build that chipboard and build that card up. So grab your dies, grab your extra paper. Let's start with this guy. And this is where, again, purple tape is your friend to hold it in place. Once you've got the right, there we go. Just got to twist and twist until you get it right. So there's one. So there's flower number 1. Flower number 2. This probably does go a little bit faster if you have punches, but I guess if you had punches, then you wouldn't have the coordinating stamp set. So we're all just along for the ride. Oh, there we go. Just like a puzzle. Everybody see what I'm doing? There we go. I think that's the way I had my card. So this one came out of here. And now, because we want to do some layers, you're going to cut a few more layers just out of white cardstock to build your own chipboard. For right now, just because I want to try and go quickly, I'm going to cut 6, which is 2 for each card. Assuming I'm going to get 6 to fit. So this is where you wish you had the fast motion camera. My kids will absolutely attest to that mom singing is not something you want to hear. I know my talents, and vocal skills are not one of them. So there's 2 for one card, or for one flower. And I scooch that up in there. There's number 2, or number 1 for number 2. Number 2 for number 2. Am I going to be able to squeeze? No, I'm going to get one more out of here, but I do have some room on my scrap from my previous card. So I am okay. I wonder. two pieces of cardstock together, and let's just see how these guys do if we're cutting two at the same time. Might be a little bit more jiggle. Now, one thing to know, and oh, you can't even see me. So I've got two pieces of cardstock. I've got my little scrappy bit on top, my primary one that I was cutting out of. When you're die cutting, especially if you're die cutting thicker materials, you want to try and stay over to the sides, whether it's the left side or the right side, because on your machine, with the roller across it, that's where you get the most pressure. So if you keep your die cutting to the outside edges, not only will it help you move around on your plates and make your plates last a little bit longer, but you'll be able to get a nicer cut without as many passes through it. So. My flour away with me. So there's one. The second layer. Oh, just about. Look at that. Nice and crisp. I really love these guys. All right, so now we have 2 layers of cardstock to make our chipboard and layer them up on our card. So let's take flower number 1. And I don't know if you can see it. I've got a little bit of yellow on this little petal here, so I know that it's going to fit in that little puzzle piece there. It is very much like building a puzzle. Let's make sure our flower layers match. There we go. Get our glue. There's layer number 1. Did I get it right? Oh, I didn't get it right. Hang on. Nope. That's why you do it first. I thought I did it first, but I guess I hadn't layered it up. Luckily, you've got a little bit of wiggle room with this liquid glue. And let's get this one right this time. I think that's going to go that way. All right. Thought I had it right. Did I move it? There it is. So there's my first flower. Do the same thing for my second flower. There we go. Yep, like that. And my flower is going to go on top. If I can get it up. I think it goes. There we go. So there's chipboard flower number 2. And you know what? This would be a great thing if you've been watching Chris's Created 8 with scraps. If you've got scraps of paper, you could just sit and make your own embellishments, you know, while you're watching TV, or maybe you're not inspired to do a full project. Definitely, this is something that you can kind of do in little bits and pieces, and then put it in a little baggie or a little storage box and keep it for future layouts. Especially if you have a really favorite Stampin' Die set. It's a great way to make use of it and make use of it over and over. Why can't I get them to line up? There they are. All right. We'll layer that on there. And my stamped one. There we go. So now I have my 3 layered chipboard flowers ready to get puzzle pieced into my card. Now, I don't have a card base, We do have the other half. Now mine isn't scored, so it probably is going to crack if you have a, oh, you know what, I have a proper card base. Nice proper card base, fold it in half. I'm going to attach my holy bits first. And maybe I'll get smart this time. I'm going to use the liquid glue just in the little points of the flowers to make sure that they stick down when they go onto the card base. That way I don't have to try and stick it under afterwards. This one was 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, so I'm lining it all the way up with my edges. And now I'm going to puzzle piece my flowers into place. So is this a little bit more work than just using pop dots? Absolutely. Does it give you more stability and a little bit more presence with your, oh, did I do this wrong? I did. That one goes up here. There we go. And then this one goes down here. I think so. I like how this gives it a more solid and even look to your flowers. So now I'm just going to glue them into those little puzzle piece holes. Or maybe you're at a crop and you left your foam dots at home. This is a great backup. Or maybe you're cutting out really delicate sentiments out of your dies that you couldn't possibly cut the foam dots small enough to get behind and not be seen. This is a great technique to have in your arsenal and ready to go. So I think I'm going to go look for a sentiment another time and probably stamp it up here, maybe in a nice crisp black. But again, just taking that random stamped piece and die cutting it out. So now you're combining a couple of our zoom techniques into one, and it gives that extra pop. If you still feel like this is maybe too one layer or one dimensional, you could always ink the edges of your popped up pieces as well to give it even more oomph than what you've done before. So there you go, ladies. I hope that you have taken something away from this and can think of a use for it in your own crafting. Like I said, you can sit and make a bunch of embellishments like this and just work on gluing layers while you're watching Netflix and build up a stash of your own embellishments. You could cut out from pattern paper like we did the previous card. Still drying over here, but I did like the contrast of doing the cardstock instead of the pattern paper. Really just depends on the look you're going for and the tools, the papers you have available. So that's for me this Saturday. I'm going to stop the recording and we get that up. Do I want to stop the recording?